Welcome to today's deep dive. We're genuinely thrilled to have you joining us today.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
So to start us off, I want you to mentally place yourself in a very specific and probably very familiar scenario for a second.
No, I think I know where this is going.
You're sitting in a high-stakes meeting, or maybe a crowded university lecture hall, or even just a tense video call with a dozen square faces staring right back at you.
Right.
You're minding your own business, listening to the discussion flow back and forth, when suddenly the person leading the room turns directly to you and asks, "So, can you share your opinion on this?"
It is the ultimate deer in the headlights moment. For a massive portion of the population, that simple question triggers an immediate, involuntary physiological response.
Pure panic. I mean, in that split second, your brain completely empties itself of all the brilliant insights you were just silently forming.
Gone. Just entirely wiped clean.
Exactly. And meanwhile, your physical body decides it's preparing for a marathon. Your heart rate skyrockets, doing intense cardio under your shirt. Your hands get clammy, and your mouth seemingly forgets how to string basic verbs and nouns together.
It's a terrible feeling.
It really is. You're left sitting there thinking, my internal monologue is so articulate, yet the person speaking out loud right now sounds completely lost.
And that disparity between knowing exactly what you want to say internally and then stumbling through it externally, it leaves people feeling incredibly discouraged.
Yeah.
They walk away from those interactions assuming they're fundamentally broken or that they just lack the innate communication skills that other successful people seem to have been born with, which is a completely false narrative.
It is entirely false.
Yeah.
You're simply experiencing a normal human reaction to pressure. And that brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We are pulling insights from a really rich instructional transcript called How to Speak Like the 1% Elite.
That's a fantastic source.
It really breaks down practical, actionable habits. We want to completely unlock the mechanics of communicating with calm, clear confidence. We are going to explore how you can maintain your composure and deliver your thoughts powerfully, even when your heart is racing and your hands are sweating.
And I think the most encouraging part of this entire framework is the underlying premise. You do not need a loud, booming, extroverted personality to command a room.
Nor do you need a flawless, elite-level vocabulary. Commanding attention and projecting authority is not about downloading a magical confidence app into your brain or, undergoing a total personality transplant.
Right. It is entirely about small, deliberate adjustments.
Tiny habits, small shifts in your word choice, your physical posture, and the pacing of your voice that stop you from shrinking down and disappearing inside your own sentences. Okay, let's unpack this, because there is a brilliant story in the source that perfectly illustrates how easily our perceived confidence can just vanish the second the environment changes.
Yes, the story of the young professional. Consider this guy who is, by all academic standards, brilliant. Throughout his university years, he was the classic high achiever. He consistently aced complex exams, wrote articulate, heavily researched essays, delivered polished presentations to his professors.
And as a superstar.
Exactly. He graduated at the top of his class. In that structured academic bubble, his language skills and his intellectual confidence appeared entirely bulletproof.
Then he transitions into the real world. He lands his first major corporate role, and inevitably he finds himself sitting in his first high-stakes boardroom meeting. There are 10 senior executives sitting around a heavy mahogany table looking incredibly serious.
High pressure.
Very high pressure. The manager pauses the discussion, looks directly at this brilliant young professional and asks, "What do you think our strategy should be?" And in that singular moment, his elite language skills completely abandon him.
His physiological stress response just completely overrode his intellect. His heart grew loud in his ears, his vocal projection dropped to a nervous whisper, and he immediately began leaning on weak filler phrases.
Right. He started sentences with, maybe, and I'm not entirely sure, but kind of.
He essentially signaled to the entire room that he didn't trust his own analysis.
But the real insight comes from what happened immediately after he finished stumbling through his answer. Another colleague at the table spoke up to offer his perspective. Now, this second colleague did not have the same elite academic pedigree.
Not at all.
His grammar was much simpler, and his vocabulary was entirely basic. Yet, when he spoke, the dynamic in the room fundamentally shifted. The executives actually stopped checking their laptops. They looked up, made eye contact, and listened intently. It was the exact same room, the exact same topic, but a radically different outcome.
What's fascinating here is it proves that credibility, that specific quality of being believable and trustworthy, has almost nothing to do with the size or complexity of your vocabulary. Credibility is deeply rooted in steadiness. Steadiness.
Yes. That second colleague didn't perform a dramatic monologue. He didn't rush his words to get it over with, and he didn't insert nervous, self-deprecating laughs into his delivery. He delivered a clear, simple sentence with steady pacing.
It fundamentally changes how you come across to other people. When we talk about projecting confidence, we are discussing the external impression you give to an audience, which is completely separate from the internal panic you might be managing.
That is such a crucial distinction.
You can be terrified on the inside, but still come across as calm, clear, and authoritative on the outside.
And this leads directly into one of the most common psychological traps that derails our communication: speaking for approval rather than speaking for clarity. When we enter an intimidating environment, say, surrounded by senior leadership or industry experts, our primary objective subtly shifts.
We go into defense mode.
Exactly. We stop trying to contribute useful information, and we start trying to ensure nobody judges us harshly. As the source material puts it, your fun, relaxed self goes on holiday, and your scared robot self takes over. The scared robot self. I love that phrasing. We actively try to soften our own statements to avoid sounding too bold or potentially incorrect. We preface our ideas with apologies, saying things like, "This might be a stupid question, or I could be totally off base here, but..."
We are actively diluting the value of our own message before the listener has even had a chance to process it. When intimidation sets in, your natural assertiveness vanishes. You default to this rigid, almost robotic version of yourself purely out of self-protection.
We should probably define what assertiveness actually means in this context.
Good point. It does not mean dominating the conversation, being aggressive, or talking over people. Assertiveness simply means expressing your thoughts in a clear, calm manner. It means respecting the intelligence of the people in the room, but also respecting your own voice enough not to preemptively apologize for it.
When we lose that assertiveness and start stumbling over our words, we tend to misdiagnose the root cause of the problem. We sit in our cars after the meeting and think, if I just knew more impressive industry jargon, I wouldn't have sounded so hesitant. But the real issue isn't a lack of vocabulary. The issue is unorganized thoughts.
We have to look at what is actively happening in your mind before you open your mouth. You can physically hear it when someone is speaking out loud while simultaneously searching for their idea internally. The words become disjointed.
Think of your brain as a filing drawer. For a lucky minority, that drawer is perfectly organized, with every thought neatly filed away. But for the vast majority of us, especially when we are put on the spot under intense pressure, that mental drawer is a chaotic mess.
Oh, absolutely.
It is full of tangled cables, outdated phone chargers, and completely random, disconnected thoughts from 2012.
If you begin to speak before you have formulated a clear thought, if you just reach blindly into that messy, pressurized drawer and pull a cable at random, you are going to pull out a massive, tangled knot. That knot becomes your sentence. The idea itself is tangled, so the delivery is tangled.
The practical solution to the tangled drawer is developing the habit of being highly deliberate. Deliberate communication means speaking with intention, rather than just throwing a disorganized handful of words into the air and hoping the listener can piece them together. The mechanism for achieving this is the 1-second pause.
Right. Before you speak, you intentionally insert a single second of silence to ask yourself a very specific framing question. What is my point in one simple sentence?
I think people are terrified of that 1-second pause. In a fast-paced meeting, taking a full second of silence feels like an eternity. We have this irrational fear that if we don't start making noise immediately, someone else will steal the floor, or people will assume we aren't smart enough to answer.
That discomfort with silence is exactly what drives the rambling. But taking a deliberate pause is not a signal of weakness or confusion. It is an intentional act of gathering your thoughts. You are simply taking the time to organize the drawer before you extract the cable.
And to the audience, that 1 second of silence doesn't look like panic. It looks incredibly thoughtful.
It also gives you a crucial opportunity to read the room. In that split second, you can assess the emotional baseline of your audience. Are these executives fatigued from a long day? Is the atmosphere tense because of a previous disagreement? Or is the group relaxed and ready to joke around?
Reading the room ensures your meticulously organized sentence actually lands as intended. If you know your core point and you accurately understand the current energy of the people receiving it, your communication goes from being a generic statement to a highly targeted, useful contribution. Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the underlying reality is that taking a pause, organizing your mental drawer, and reading the room or all relatively simple tasks when you are sitting in your living room feeling completely safe. The real challenge emerges when the stakes are genuinely high.
That is the ultimate crucible for true confidence. It is effortless to sound wise and composed when there is no pressure. The true test of your communication habits happens when a senior stakeholder sharply disagrees with your proposal or someone subtly questions your expertise and the room suddenly feels incredibly hostile.
In those high-pressure confrontational moments, our newly formed good habits tend to evaporate instantly. We start speaking rapidly, the pitch of our voice jumps up an octave, and the carefully organized message gets completely lost in our physiological reaction. This brings us to the critical concept of emotional control.
Yes, the car analogy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine your mind as a car that you are driving down the highway.
Your emotions are absolutely allowed to be in the car with you. They are inevitable passengers. If you are frustrated, anxious, or defensive, those feelings are sitting right there in the cabin. They can even complain loudly from the back seat. But the unbreakable rule of emotional control is that those emotions are absolutely not allowed to touch the steering wheel, and they do not get to choose the road.
I know I have let my emotional brain grab the steering wheel before. You can see this happen in real time with email or text messages. You receive a frustrating message, your emotional brain takes over the keyboard, and you fire off an aggressive, defensive response. The very second you hit send, your wise, logical brain logs back online, and you experience immediate regret.
You wish you could reach into the server and pull the message back.
Exactly. That immediate regret is the hallmark of reactive communication. When you're in a high-stakes environment and you feel that physical heat rising in your chest, the biological indicator that your emotional brain is trying to take the wheel, the actionable step is to take one deep, incredibly slow breath before you respond.
It is simple but structurally profound. That single slow breath forces a physiological reset. It creates a literal boundary of time and space between your reactive emotional brain and your intentional wise brain. In that space, you give yourself the opportunity to ask, what outcome do I actually want my words to achieve in this specific situation?
It allows you to maintain your composure. Being composed doesn't mean you are an unfeeling robot. You still experience the frustration or the stress, the emotion is still actively sitting in the backseat complaining, but you are actively choosing not to let it drive your mouth. You transition from a state of reacting to a state of responding.
Maintaining that composed, intentional tone, especially in the middle of a professional conflict, makes it significantly easier to keep your sentences clear and command respect. However, even if you master your emotional responses and you neatly organize your thoughts in that mental drawer, there is another pervasive trap that nervous speakers fall into.
Oh, the rambling trap.
The rambling trap.
This is a trap I find myself navigating constantly. When I feel unsure of my footing in a conversation, my default mechanism is to just keep talking. I will state my core point, but then I will immediately bury it under a mountain of extra, unnecessary caveats and details.
Right, because you fear the first sentence wasn't enough.
Exactly. I do it because I secretly fear that my initial sentence wasn't profound enough, or I'm just desperately trying to fill the uncomfortable silence that follows my point.
It is an incredibly common defensive pattern. You essentially hide the value of your contribution under a barrage of noise. We often refer to this as beating around the bush. Instead of addressing the core issue directly, you talk in endless cautious circles around the perimeter of the topic.
It sounds like, well, I haven't reviewed all the data yet, and obviously there are many different factors at play, but it seems to me that perhaps there is a slight inefficiency in how we are approaching the new timeline, when what you actually mean is the current timeline is unrealistic.
Yes. And by the time you finish the rambling version, the audience has completely lost the thread of your argument. Think of it like a gift box. Imagine you have a very small but incredibly valuable piece of jewelry to give someone. Beating around the bush is the equivalent of placing that small gift inside a box and then placing that box inside another box until you have layered it inside 15 different boxes.
The recipient has to exhaust themselves just trying to find the point.
Precisely. By the time the listener finally unboxes all your caveats, apologies, and filler words to get to the actual point, their mental energy is entirely depleted. They are tired and confused. This is why developing the habit of conciseness is so vital. Being concise means delivering a complete, clear message with the absolute minimum number of words required.
You don't hand the room a 500-word essay when a tight, well-crafted paragraph achieves the exact same goal.
Exactly.
People often resist being concise because they worry it makes them sound cold, blunt, or overly aggressive. But framing conciseness as cold is a misconception. Being concise is actually an act of deep professional kindness.
It is.
It demonstrates that you highly value the listener's time and respect their cognitive load. You are handing them the valuable gift directly, without forcing them to tear through 15 layers of cardboard to find it.
It is the ultimate display of respect. Now, it is important to realize that even if your words are beautifully concise and your mental drawer is perfectly organized, your audience is still processing another massive stream of data simultaneously. They are reading your body language.
Right.
Long before your vocal cords produce a single sound, your physical posture has already set the baseline for how your message will be received.
Your body is essentially broadcasting an introduction before you speak. People in the room are instinctively tracking how you are positioned in your chair, whether your eye contact is steady or darting around the room, and if your general posture is expansive and grounded or collapsed and defensive.
A powerful way to conceptualize this is the idea of honest shoulders. Your shoulders rarely lie about your internal emotional state.
If your perfectly concise words are stating, "I am fully confident in this quarterly projection," but your shoulders are physically hunched up around your ears, signaling, "Please do not look at me. I want to escape this room," the audience will instinctively discount your words.
Every time.
They will always believe the physical story your shoulders are telling over the verbal story your mouth is telling.
The visual data always overrides the audio data. The key adjustment here is understanding that projecting physical confidence does not require you to adopt grand theatrical gestures. You do not need to pace around the boardroom like a movie star. True physical authority is usually found in stillness. It is about holding your ground.
Holding your ground means you resist the urge to physically shrink or fold inward just because the atmosphere gets tense or a senior leader questions your logic.
A great visualization for this is a mature tree with deep roots. When a storm rolls in and the wind blows violently, the branches might sway and the leaves will certainly rustle, but the heavy trunk of the tree remains absolutely stationary. It is anchored.
The tree stays.
Yes. That is the exact physical presence you want to cultivate when you are speaking under pressure. You want to appear totally at home within your own physical space.
Achieving that stillness means actively eliminating all the tiny nervous sticks we use to self-soothe. We all have them. Adjusting a collar, repeatedly shifting your weight from left to right in your desk chair, incessantly touching your hair or clicking a pen.
Those micro-movements act as a neon sign, broadcasting your internal discomfort to the entire room. You have to consciously choose to be the tree. Anchor yourself.
When you stabilize your physical body, when you stop your posture from actively fighting the authority of your words, you create a solid foundation for your voice. Your vocal delivery can then step up and do the heavy lifting of supporting your message.
And there is a major misconception regarding vocal authority here. People frequently conflate having a strong voice with simply having a loud voice. They assume that to sound confident, they need to artificially project their volume as if they are shouting to the back row of a crowded theater.
Right, but artificially cranking up your volume does not project confidence.
Yeah.
It projects panic. You end up sounding angry, erratic, or highly stressed. The true measure of vocal authority isn't sheer volume. It is how effectively your voice carries your thought from the beginning to the very end.
You have to carry the sentence. The energy, the clarity, and the intention you put into the first word of your point must be sustained all the way through to the final syllable.
We observe the failure of this constantly in professional environments. A person will start their sentence with excellent energy and conviction, but as they approach the end of their thought, they lose their nerve. Their vocal energy completely collapses.
They trail off into a rapid, quiet, apologizing mumble. It leaves the entire room with this lingering, uncomfortable feeling of, never mind.
That never mind fade out is fatal to your credibility. If you pitch a brilliant solution, but end it by letting your voice drop off into a whisper like, "So we should probably update the software, but whatever you guys think is fine," the room will forget the brilliant solution.
The only thing that will stick in their memory is that hesitant, insecure, never mind feeling.
To counteract that vocal drop-off, you have to keep your voice fully present. Paradoxically, the most effective technique for sounding more powerful isn't to increase your volume, but to decrease your speaking pace. When you deliberately slow down your delivery and allow yourself to breathe naturally between phrases, your vocal cords relax, and your tone naturally drops into a more stable, resonant register.
Slowing down does not make you sound sluggish or boring. Taking your time communicates that you are thoughtful, serious, and deeply secure in your expertise. It sends a subconscious signal to the room that your ideas are highly valuable and therefore they are worth waiting for.
So, What does this all mean? We have explored the mechanics of organizing the mental drawer with a 1-second pause. We discussed keeping the emotional brain in the backseat of the car. We talked about handing people the gift directly instead of burying it in 15 boxes. We covered the concept of honest shoulders and being the tree. And finally, carrying your voice to the end of the sentence. What is the unifying thread here?
The unifying thread that ties all these habits together is the concept of alignment. Cultivating true confidence is not a fake performance. It is definitely not an exhausting theatrical routine where you force yourself to mimic the extroverted behaviors of someone else.
Pretending to be the loudest, most dominant personality in the room when you are naturally analytical and quiet feels incredibly inauthentic, and people can spot that fake performance from a mile away.
They absolutely can. Authentic confidence is simply achieving alignment. It occurs when your internal thoughts, your emotional state, your word choice, your physical posture, and your vocal tone are all operating cooperatively on the exact same team. They are perfectly aligned in the same direction, supporting the exact same message, rather than actively attacking one another.
When you stop fighting your own instincts, when your perfectly concise words aren't battling the anxiety showing in your honest shoulders, and your wise, intentional brain is firmly holding the steering wheel despite the emotions complaining in the back seat, you effortlessly project composure.
You come across as highly credible and assertive, regardless of how simple your grammar might be. You achieve this because you are finally standing firmly beside your own voice instead of actively running away from it. Ultimately, an audience will intuitively trust your expertise when you sound and look like you genuinely trust yourself.
As we conclude this deep dive, we want you to take a moment for some practical self-reflection. The next time you find yourself in a high-stakes environment, whether it is a boardroom, a classroom, or a tense negotiation, and you feel that familiar wave of panic rising, do not just automatically blame your language skills. Take a breath and ask yourself, which specific part of my communication is out of alignment right now?
Is the issue in your thoughts? Is your mental drawer a tangled mess? Are your emotions lunging for the steering wheel?
Are you burying your valuable points inside 15 rambling gift boxes? Are your honest shoulders shrinking inward instead of holding their ground like a tree? Or is your voice dropping off into an apologetic nevermind at the end of your sentences? You don't need to fix everything at once. Build confidence, sentence by sentence.
And as you begin working on bringing those elements into alignment, consider this final perspective shift. We started this discussion by examining that universal horror movie sensation, the racing heart, the clammy hands, the visceral spike of adrenaline right before you are forced to speak. We have been conditioned our entire lives to label that intense physiological reaction as fear.
Wow.
But if true confidence is fundamentally just a matter of structural alignment, what if that nervous, heart-racing feeling isn't actually fear at all? What if it is simply your biological system delivering a massive surge of necessary energy? It is the exact raw power you need to perfectly align your mind, anchor your body, and project your voice. The energy is already there, freely provided by your biology. You just have to decide deliberately how you are going to steer it.
That is an incredibly provocative thought to take into your next meeting. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today and exploring these frameworks. Your journey of learning and refinement doesn't stop here, and we will be right here waiting to explore the next stack of fascinating sources with you whenever you are ready. See you next time.